about the prostate element in them getting older and all the rest of it. So I think he did a lot for that, and then the subsequent cancer diagnosis. So it does depend who it is, doesn't it? And also relevancy as well for that person on that topic.
Definitely, yeah. Well, we've gone through both polls, so I'm really excited to see what you've got in this deck here. So I'm going to turn the camera off, I'm going to disappear, and I'll see you a bit later on.
Thanks, Ebony. Ebony, should we quickly introduce ourselves before we get going?
Let's do it.
Okay.
You go first, Amy.
So I'm Amy. Some of you may have seen me before, heard from me. Apparently I can talk for England, so I'll try not to today because Ebony and I are sharing. So we're both in the PR team. I've been here. I was trying to work out the 3 or 4 years. It's terrible, isn't it? You can't remember how many years. But sort of manage PR overall, and Ebony and I share some clients. We have some individual clients as well, but work very much as a team. And I'm delighted to be presenting with her today because you get to see us as our entirety. So over to you, Ebony.
I'm super excited to be presenting with you today, and it's my first webinar. So I've been with Annika coming up to a year now, and as Amy said,
is it really?
It's a year anniversary next month. And we cover within our team, we cover kind of everything PR, content, and also organic social as well. And yeah, my background's in all of those things. So an exciting webinar today. I think I was going to say one of the things, hopefully, that you guys will be able to take away from it is lots of kind of tips and hints that hopefully you can then go away and use in your day-to-day and implement. So we want it to be very much something at the end of the session where you've kind of got a lot of ideas of maybe how you can start PR if you've not already on that journey. Or so excited.
We are excited, and I think we're hopefully that you will get a lot from this, and we try to put it into different sections, and Ebony and I will be presenting different sections so you can absorb the information we're going to go through. So I'm going to start in a minute by giving a PR overview, kind of talking about what it is and why it's important. Then Ebony is going to discuss what makes a PR story. Then I'm going to look at how we can write a successful press release, and also all the kind of things to avoid when writing a press release, things that journalists don't like and don't kind of make them or encourage them to publish a story. Then Ebony will jump in and talk about how to look at compile media lists and pitching in a story. And I'll wrap it up by talking about media monitoring and metrics. So those important sort of KPIs and ROIs, the return on investment, in terms of your PR and what you've been doing. So you need to understand how it's worked, or if it's not worked, and what you can do to change it. So I'm going to dive straight in and talk about PR and why it's important. Sorry, Ebony.
I don't think we've said, but we'll do all questions at the end. So I've seen there's already a couple come in through the chat, which is why I just want to bring it up. But
thank you. I'm focused now. That's it. You see, so that's unblinkered. Can't do more than one thing. Okay, so why is PR so important? Well, I know that you guys think it's important because you're here. So I'm delighted we've got so many of you here today. So thank you all for coming and understanding the value of PR. I think it's a drum that Ebony and I bang sort of every day in and out of work as to why it's so important. It's kind of like a twofold thing, I guess, PR. So the first part of it for me is all around building strong brand awareness. It's building reputation. It's really powerful because it helps you kind of leverage your overall brand strategy and how you control your messaging. So it's something that you own as a brand or business or service. So you control that messaging. So it's all owned by you. And secondly, it can help generate that really high level of direct and organic web traffic to your site, including direct referrals, sort of really building up your SEO activity. So it's like a two-pronged approach, I guess, in terms of getting your message out there. So what are the key benefits for businesses? It can help improve your brand's reach and visibility. That means the opportunity to be seen. And that means, organically in print and online. So the more people that can see and listen and hear about you, the better. as long as it's positive, obviously. It can enhance your credibility and reputation. So that means that if you're trying to build awareness of your business or brand in a positive light, PR can really help you to do that. So kind of really good conduit to do that. It allows you as a business to control what messages your target audience see and listen to and understand, and can really help protect your brand. And that's important. I've talked about crisis management in the past, but protecting your brand in the first instance can really go a long way to helping you protect your business if there's an issue or crisis at some point. We talked about KPIs at the end, but it can PR can help influence sales and generate revenue for your business, and also can maximize your return on investment, and importantly, gain an edge over your competitors. You want to have more share of voice for your product or brand than your competitors, and PR is a really effective way of being able to do that. So we'll look at PR in two ways. One's traditional and one's digital. At Annika, we use both every single day. And some clients of ours have just would use traditional PR methods. Some use more digital, and some have a combination of both. But I think it's important to kind of run through each so you can understand the benefits of each and how they can also blend, because it's very much a blended approach as well, if that's what you'd want to do. So it really comes down to what your objective is and what the agenda is of the business in terms of which kind of one you use. I would say that traditional is more effective for kind of brand awareness, particularly, for example, with B2B clients, we often use straightforward traditional PR to land stories in the trade press. Those stories are shown online, but basically a lot of trade press still businesses want to see their name in print. So by issuing a press release through a traditional method, that is kind of a very basic example of traditional PR. Whereas digital PR really supports your SEO objectives around link building and generating website traffic, and actually can be much easier to track because you can see an influence, for example, on your domain rating. So I'm going to break it down quite quickly in terms of traditional and digital. So offline means not online, but so articles in magazines and newspapers. Traditional PR is seen things like events management. So, for example, we run a press office at a trade show in the summer. So that's very much kind of hands-on PR there. Talked about crisis communications. So there's no doubt that traditional PR reactive statements, press releases can manage a crisis. Again, another crisis element could be someone speaking, or even a speaking opportunity at an event or conference. That's traditional PR. And also different things such as giving a comment or including information from a business in an advice column, maybe adding your product into a gift guide, and obviously interviews and features. Whereas a digital is much more around link building and sort of influencers. Just think about all the kind of things you might do online. Definitely supports SEO. It's a tactic for SEO. If you're getting a link from your publication, your business, to a high domain rating publication such as a national newspaper, you're going to really influence your website's visibility because of that link through. It can build your reputation online. And there's things like blogger outreach. You can have guest bloggers on your site. That's a really great example of digital PR. Webinars, we're obviously doing that today. Podcasts, they're so popular. They really came into their own during lockdown. And it's a fashion that's not gone away. And there's more and more great podcasts out there. So PR can also, it doesn't have to stand alone. It complements wider marketing channels. We've talked about the fact that we deliver organic social media within our team. So that's a really great example, but also it can feed into kind of paid social media advertising. There's PR can influence email newsletters. It can support things such as videos, say your company expert speaking, or a third-party video on your site, and seminars and webinars, that kind of thing. There's quite a few elements there, but so hopefully you've had a kind of look through to see. So over to Ebony now.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you for that. keep the comments coming in, keep the questions coming in, guys, just as a reminder as you think of them. But yeah, now I'm going to talk a little bit more about what makes a PR story. So I think we've already touched on some of this through the poll that we've put out. So giving you a little bit of a few hints about maybe what you could think about when you're determining what might make a strong story. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to go through kind of a few different points that you can think about. So the first one is relevance. The story should be timely and of interest to the target audience. So I actually mentioned the King Charles cancer diagnosis earlier, and I think there's a really good example that backs this up that came off the back of that from Macmillan. So Macmillan, obviously, that story came out. They then noticed a trend within their own traffic to the website. People were searching more, as Amy said earlier, searches for, prostate cancer, for cancer in general went up. And Macmillan saw a trend through their own website traffic. And having seen that trend, they then turned it around into their own PR story that they outreached to press. And I saw stories in the kind of national press, like the Daily Mail, the Sun, who have ran stories for Macmillan. Now you might think, oh, that's just something that maybe wasn't planned through or thought, but actually what Macmillan have done there is noticed a trend, noticed that there's something relevant right now that they can talk about, and they've turned it around into a story where they can obviously promote their own services. Personally, for me, Macmillan's a great charity, so any coverage they get is great. But that's just a really nice example of relevance, and I think it's using your thinking about what's in the news, keeping your eye on your finger on the pulse for what's going on in the news and how you might be able to kind of jump on those trends when you think about your brand or your company. So always make sure that the message is clear and compelling. So don't, I think as marketeers, sometimes it can be really, really easy to muddle lots of different messages into one because you're trying to get as much information out to that audience as you can. And actually what that can do is just completely dilute what you're trying to do. So it's really, really important to just keep it clear and compelling and concise, and try to focus on one topic at a time. Don't go out there saying 3 or 4 different messages within one. The third one is emotional connection, which is, I don't know what you guys like, and Amy, I don't know what you feel, but whenever I read something in the press, I usually come to the end of the story and I think, oh, they've just made that up to. So, for instance, my personal example of this is I've been watching a lot of Love Island recently, which tells you a bit about me. But I get a lot of articles come up on my my social feeds from usually the Sun, and they've come up with a story that relates to Love Island, and actually they kind of twist it in a way that changes. That changes the narrative from maybe what went on in the show, and they're doing that on purpose to evoke emotion. That's just obviously a very personal example, but when we are thinking about creating stories as a brand, you might feel comfortable to be bolder and to fake news. That's exactly right, Rebecca. That's a big trend at the moment. But yeah, as a brand, you might just want to think about, actually, how am I going to make people feel when this story goes out? And as a brand, you might also feel comfortable provoking emotions that might make people feel uncomfortable, or but that's absolutely down to kind of each individual brand. A few other things to consider. So, have you got a unique or unusual aspect? So we're kind of always looking at this with our clients, I think, Amy. We're always looking for, are there people within the business that can provide commentary that no one else is able to provide, that makes them a thought leader, that makes them stand out to their competitors, or they can offer something that no one else can? I think if you really look into your business, you will be able to find examples of this, but it's just having that kind of look to see, actually, what can I offer that no one else is able to? And that links into credibility and authenticity as well. So it's quite important now. And I think you see more and more people becoming spokesperson people for the business, people who are really truly experts within their field, able to offer advice, commentary, that type of thing. And also making sure that what you're sending out is backed up by data. So for instance, the Macmillan example I mentioned a minute ago, they use their own data to create something that was really credible. Always make sure that it's as visual as possible. So if you're going to send out a press release, it's extremely important to make sure that what you're sending it out with is going to cut through the noise. We'll go in a little bit later about pitching stories to press, but yeah, we want to just make sure that, you know, that if you're sending out product images, make sure that they are high quality product images, not something that's just, say, a cutout on a white background. You want it to be, you know, really represent your brand in the most positive light. And of course, obviously, make sure it aligns with your brand values. You know, don't do anything that doesn't stand true to who you are and what you do. Another nice point to think about is potential for engagement. So, you know, how can you get people to share this on social media? How can it spark conversation? You know, what type of forms of engagement can you do and can you use to get people to kind of like and share on social media? That is always a really kind of good thing to think about when you're thinking of creating a story. And then lastly, make sure you've always got measurable objectives and clear objectives. So whether that be you want to increase your brand awareness, and you might want to, you know, measure your share of voice, that type of thing, drive traffic to your website. Just make sure whatever you are, whenever you're pushing out a piece of PR, you know exactly why you're doing it and what you want to achieve. So for a lot of our clients recently, Amy spoke earlier about traditional versus digital. A lot for some of our clients, we're really focused on the kind of digital side and actually the SEO metrics and looking at their link profile and their domain authority, that type of thing. For other clients, it is very much about brand awareness. And, you know, we're looking at, you know, how much coverage they're getting in comparison to their competitors and stuff like that. So there's lots of different objectives to be thinking about. Also, that's a really interesting point at the bottom of the slide that I think's worth noting, is that often when you're working within a business day in, day out, you actually don't see things as news or as exciting. It's really easy to kind of get bogged down in the, oh, I've heard that so many times, no one else is going to be interested in it. And I think we see this a lot as PRs, don't we, Amy? We're kind of jumping on things that our clients think, oh, that's, you know, that's not newsworthy. And actually,
always happens, Ebony. So at the end of a meeting, because you might say to be with a client and talk about, go through different plans, and it's only when you're leaving the office and they mention something, like, my God, that's it. That's an amazing news story, because they just don't see it. And it happens, I mean, so many times.
It's always off the cuff, like off the cuff, you know.
Comment, yeah.
Tell us about that. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Sorry,
yeah, so that's a really good point. Like, and sometimes that's a really good point in terms of, you know, sometimes if you are so close to a brand, actually having that support from a PR agency or from an external support, like external system, can really help you just kind of understand what you can start to leverage from a PR perspective. So to just give people a few examples of the types of stories that you might see if you're a B2B, and then I'm also going to do some examples for B2C on the next slide as well. So B2B coverage really is more about kind of business-led stuff. So we're looking at things like company updates. Do not take for granted how much your industry will love to hear about new senior appointments in your company. You know, if you're expanding into new countries or new territories, if the business is doing well, if you've got, you know, profit and kind of profit increases during the year. I saw one about Dunelm just the other day, funnily enough, in, I think it was Insider Media had run the story, and Dunelm had increased their profit by 5%, even though it's been a difficult trading environment. There's so many, not just industry press will love that, but the business press will love that as well. So yeah, it's worth thinking about these types of things that you might see as a business to be quite boring, but actually that's not true across the board. Things like award wins. So have you been shortlisted? Have you won? Particularly if you've won, like, why would you want to win an award and then not shout about it? It's an absolute no-brainer to do that. New clients, businesses, again, something that, especially if they're particularly high profile new clients, or, they're well known, you need to leverage those partnerships that you've got, and start talking about it. Industry commentary industry commentary about kind of trending topics. So that I've mentioned that earlier, but identifying spokespeople within your business. So for us, for instance, Anne is an absolute oracle, to be perfectly honest. But particularly when she talks about AI, there's people within businesses that are a fountain of knowledge that actually it's great to share that knowledge. And then some of the last ones on this slide, we've got CSR. So are you working with charities? What are you doing to make a difference within your local communities, or, communities at large? And then, of course, event promotion as well. So, for instance, at Annika, we do a yearly event, Leicester Digital Live, and we will always make sure that we want as many people as possible to hear about that. B2C is a little bit different in terms of your approach to the press, and actually these are some really nice examples about all the kinds of stories that you can do. So trend-led articles, things like you can jump off the back of. So for instance, at the start of the new year, there's always a kick to be healthier and fitter. If you're within that space, if you're within the kind of health and fitness industry, or the well-being industry, I don't think there's a brand out there that probably doesn't jump on that time of year and start doing more activity. Seasonal product roundups. So for instance, I used to work for toy brands, and Christmas was always a really big seasonal time of year for us. And we would look at opportunities to featuring gift guides. And also we'd look at, even television opportunities, like This Morning do their gifting segment. So they're all types of like product placement, kind of seasonal product roundups that you could potentially kind of jump off the back of. Q&As about new products, and just Q&As with people around the business as well. So let's look at, say, Gymshark and Ben, who's there. Well, he's not their CEO anymore, but he was, who obviously started up the company. People like him, people love to know the story behind the brand and the people behind the brand. New product launches, again, straightforward when you want to kind of talk about your new product and do outreach for that. We've spoken a little bit about partnerships for B2B, but this is just as important for B2C as well. And this is where, you kind of your influencer relationships and the kind of people and celebrities and brands that you might work with to endorse your own company. They are extremely important. As someone said earlier, I don't like and resonate with all celebrities. Actually, you need to make sure that whatever celebrities and influencers you work with, they very much resonate with your brand. And then lastly, innovations and new technologies. Again, it's an opportunity for you to be able to just demonstrate your knowledge and expertise within an area. So we wanted to do a little bit on ideation, and actually how we would kind of start the process of creating those stories in a kind of a practical way. So we've put here like a very kind of straightforward 4-step process that you could follow. So the first thing that we would encourage you to do is to actually identify kind of probably 5 5 to 10 kind of priority publications that you as a business would like to get coverage in, and then start researching them. What type of stories are they already putting out? What are the journalists who work for that publication writing about? What are they interested in? And how can you as a business either complement the stuff that they're already doing or provide them with new information that they might not be aware of? So I think that's a really key and important thing to do, is identify where you'd like to have coverage and how you can, and look at what they're already doing. What Amy and I have recently started doing is we use this called Craft. It's called Craft, but it's like a board that we can use where we just dump all of the ideas that we like. And that can be anything. It can be social media posts that we've seen. It can be, and we break this down by clients. So each client has kind of got an ideas board. It can be, articles that we've seen about a competitor, maybe even, that actually looks quite good. And so we can kind of stay on top of kind of industry trends and stuff like that. But then it's also a way of giving us ideas and inspiration for our own activity. Third, just start brainstorming. Write a list of campaign ideas, like get it down on paper. No idea is a bad idea in the beginning, I don't think. Like, as long as you're coming up with stuff, and me and Amy have probably had some shockers in the past that we'd look back on and think, why on earth did we suggest that? But yeah, coming up with the ideas is kind of, it's just starting. As with anything in life, you've just got to start. And then lastly, what you can do is then qualify them. What is the risk of me doing this? What is the relevance of it to my company and the industry? And lastly, how easy is it going to be to deliver? If you want to be reactive, if you've got the time to be reactive, because it does take a lot of time as well, look at what journalists actually want. So if you look on Twitter and hashtag journo requests, you'll find a lot of things on there that journalists are actually requesting information for. Harrow is a free tool. It's called Help a Reporter. And again, you'll get daily emails and you can set it up so you can personalize it to your own industry. So you can get alerts for your own industries or what's relevant to you. And you'll get emails every day, and it will just say, X from X publication is looking for a speaker to do this, or is looking for someone to offer commentary on this. So it's a really good way to just, again, be reactive and jump on things. There are also paid tools that do the same. So Response Source and Just Reach Out are two other really good examples. And just some other really quick top tips. So always think about your own data. Leverage national events. So, there's lots of national calendars online that you can look at, but just an example there, International Women's Day. I've already spoken about partnerships, so I won't go into that one too much. And if in doubt, have a look at what your competitors are doing to see if they're getting, news coverage. And we don't want to steal their ideas, but sometimes it can just start that ideas generation.
Thank you, Ebony. I'm going to now talk about press releases. So you've had your ideation, you looked at what your competitors are writing, you've got your idea. How do you get that into the hands of the press? So journalists do receive not just hundreds but thousands of press releases every single day. So yours really has to be something that stands out and catch their eye. So another thing we would suggest, as well as it standing out, needs to be well written, and it has to have the right hook. So it has to entice the journalist really quickly. It has to grab their attention. It's important that you include everything the journalist needs. Often particularly in B2B, we will write a press release and we'll see it in online or in print verbatim to what we've actually submitted. So they haven't got time to kind of go through it and rewrite the story. They will take the information you've sent effectively and republish it. So it's important that they have the opportunity to do that because they haven't really got time to come back to you and ask questions necessarily. Make sure your press release is relevant to the journalist you're sending it to. Very, very important. You just do not want to send information to the wrong journalist, particularly time and time again, because you're only going to annoy them and you won't get the coverage. So you do need to identify who the right person is And that's even whether they are a features writer or a news writer or an online content manager. Really, you can find out exactly who each person is and make sure you're targeting it to them. And importantly, if you are sending relevant press releases to the right journalist and it's information they're using, there is no doubt they will come to you and ask you for information. So they might come to you and say, well, I know you've spoken about this before. Can you provide a comment on this particular subject now? And that actually helps you to gain a real advantage over your competitors. It's important because if you are being asked for an opinion and not your competitor, you're going to get that share voice. So that's a great way of achieving additional really positive coverage and help build that reputation up and you'll build that narrative about your business. So he talks about the good things about press releases. Well, why do they get ignored? It could be that the subject line doesn't grab the journalist's attention, or it doesn't necessarily summarize the story very well. They don't get what you're saying in that first headline. They can't find the facts in the press release. It's way too long. I mean, the information might be buried somewhere and you've got like 5 pages to troll through, so it's just going to go in the bin effectively. It could also be too salesy. There's a fine line between being sales-led and actually getting a story out there. It can be very much about the way it's been written as well, not just about the message, but it's important that it isn't sales-led because they'll just see that as an advert and you'll get advertising people phoning you up. I mean, we've had it, you know, they get the wrong end of the stick, but yeah, you just don't want to be doing that. You want to be placing, you know, your story in for free, not paying for an advert. And don't use company acronyms, all the things that you might use within your business, those short little words and the way you might describe things that's relevant for your business or service or product. No one else gets it. So make sure you're using plain English that everyone can understand and everyone knows what you're talking about. It's important that if we're using a quote, they need to add something to the press release. Often they're a really good way of actually putting some more information in there in a more interesting way and making it stand out more. Particularly it's from that relevant spokesperson, as Ebony was talking about. So that spokesperson can really enhance what you're saying. Don't make it too long. There might not be an image or a video there. So that won't kind of bring it to life. We talked about how important it is to be visual. Put your press release in the body of an email. So it's if it's sent as an attachment, it might be seen as a virus, something that won't want to be clicked on. And a journalist can also tell if it's been templated. It's not personal to them. They want to think that this person, this business brand, has really thought about this story, making it relevant for me. And if it's just really generic, they'll just think, oh, they don't really care. And I'm not bothered. If they're not bothered, I'm not bothered. So what should it include in terms of copy? You've got to make sure you've got a very attention-grabbing headline. Keep it simple. One line's great. Short and sweet is fantastic. A subhead can be used actually to supplement information if necessary. And I've been working in PR for years. I won't tell you how long, but using the 5 W's is something that I learned all those years ago. It's not changed, never will do. You actually, you know, if you can cover off who, so who the company is, what the subject is, what the news is, where it's happening, you know, if it's local to the journalist, whether it's UK bound or global, when is it happening? Is it happening now? Is it a future announcement? And why? That's the story. That is your story. Anything else you put out is just supplementary information. But those 5 things are the most important things in a press release, and you've got to have them up front. You've got to have them up top so they can be grabbed by the journalist and reproduced as is. Supplementary information can sort of comprise 2 to 5 paragraphs. Then your quote, making sure it's interesting and relevant and engaging, really important. Information about the business, so things like, you know, how long the business has been established, how many employees there are, what the profit margin is. Don't put it in the main body of the press release. Put it in what's called a boilerplate, and that goes right at the end. So that's information that just kind of gives a journalist some background. It's not the story, but it's interesting to them, but it doesn't need to be in the main body of the press release. So you pop that at the end. And if you're using imagery or video, which we do recommend, make sure you reference who's in the picture, because they will want to be flagged up and highlighted. Also then, in terms of structure, great to have a logo at the top of your press release so your brand's visible straight away, so people can actually identify it when they're going through. So that's really important. Let the journalist know whether it's going to be released immediately or whether it's embargoed, as in you can have the information now, but actually we can't talk about it until a certain date. So because they will publish it if they don't see a time frame on it. So make sure that's very apparent. Put the date of issue in the first para, so again they can check back and see when it was actually sent to them, because it can get lost, because they get so many. Just need to make it simple and straightforward as possible. Include links, so whether it's your URL to your homepage or URL to your product or service, make sure it's in there. When you finish your press release, write ends at the end, so people know that's stopped, and then your boilerplate comes after that. And have a clear call to action at the end. So whether it's your contact information, a URL again to your homepage or product, phone number, really important. So you can be contacted in case you want to find out further information. Keep it, I would say, no more than 2 pages, but 1 page is fantastic because you can always pop that boilerplate information on page 2 and keep it concise and to the point as well. Okay, over to Ebony.
Thank you, Amy. So we're going to cover media list creation and outreach. So what is a media list? It's essentially a database of all your contacts, all your media contacts, and it has a lot of information in there. Now, it's really, really important that we keep media lists up to date. So we are always, we do pretty regular checks to make sure that they are up to date, because obviously people move on, they change jobs, so that type of thing. That's no different in the world of journalism. So yeah, that's a really important and key point. When you're building a journalist, you want to have actually quite a lot of different bits of information in there. So not just their kind of contact information. You also want to know what obviously publication they work for, if they have any particular specialisms that they talk about. There might be a kind of love talking about stuff in technology or in health. Make sure you know this stuff about the people that you're contacting. And then also keep records of the conversations that you have with them. You might have some, telephone conversations that actually you want us to kind of mark down and make sure that you kind of track everything. You can create media lists for free. So as an agency, PR agencies tend to pay for services to access large media databases. And that really is one of the benefits of working with a PR agency, is we actually can tap into lots of different, contacts, and we've built up over a very long time different media contacts within lots of different industries, and yeah, but you can do it for free if you are a kind of a smaller brand, or if you've not got the budget. Best way to look for journalists is LinkedIn. Looked on the publication websites, there's always a contact us page or an about us page where you can find who the editor is and who some of the supporting editors are as well. Twitter, we mentioned earlier, but is a great way to look, use the hashtag journo requests, and you can obviously connect with them and direct message them. And then you also just might want to look at some of the print magazines, trade press within your industry, for instance, and you can look on there to find editors' names. But as Amy mentioned earlier, it's extremely important to make sure that they are relevant. So you could have, we don't just have one blanket media list for each of our clients. Actually, we break them down by, it could be industry press, it could be local press, it could be, business press, for instance. So we don't just have one blanket list that we send everything to all the time. We make sure that we're looking at the piece that we're putting together, and we're contacting the right media contacts. So that's something that's really, really important to do. And then how to pitch, we've mentioned here, Amy mentioned earlier, make sure that it's personal. Don't just have, a blanket email go out to everyone that, that's going to be lost because they know it's just not targeted at them. And that's, send an email, have a friendly introduction, maybe mention an article that they've recently put out that you love. Like, there's lots of different ways in which you can connect with someone via email. You can also pick up the telephone. I think that's a forgotten art sometimes in the day of emails and internet. Actually pick up the phone and have a conversation, and tell them that you've got a story that you think they'll love. There's lots of different ways in which you can pitch a story. Our top tips for pitching. So find the journalist's name and address them personally. Mention something you saw about them, as we just said. Share your thoughts on a recent article, and mention a mutual connection if you are able to. As with everything, relationships are key, and that's no less important within the world of PR, to be honest. It's probably one of the most important things.
Thanks, Ebony. So I was responding to one of our cohort who's writing about a press release. So hopefully I've helped there. If not, we can talk about it at the end. I am conscious of time, though. We've got 15 minutes and quite a lot to go through. So forgive me if I kind of run through these a bit, but I'm keen that we answer some of the questions as well at the end. So, and there will of course be the handout, so you can refer back to the slides afterwards, which I think will be helpful because there's some links coming up in here for media monitoring. So there is a definition around media monitoring, but effectively it's how you track, observe and analyse your media content across various platforms to understand how your brand, organisation, event or topic has been portrayed and discussed. That's interesting to think about how it's being portrayed, because actually you can get from your media monitoring the sentiment of the actual coverage, not just about the stories being published. Has it been published in a negative way, positively, or in a neutral manner? And we think about the platforms that includes newspapers, magazines, TV, radio, blogs, social media, for example, so across the whole range, and some are better at this than others, and some will be more specific than others. So what's the benefit? You can get real-time tracking of your brand mentions, so you can react to something if it comes out. If you didn't know a new story when they were going to publish it, you can see it and track it and react to it as necessary. It really helps for crisis management. Suddenly, if you see loads of press coverage coming in, you think, oh, hang on a minute, I wasn't expecting something. There could be something negative, so you can quickly pick up and nip it in the bud. Really, really important. So that's key. It's great for monitoring what your competitors are up to. You can see what they're writing about, what they're talking about in terms of trends and issues and topics. So, and if it's, you can use it as some insights to talk about different things for your business. And obviously, we talked when Ebony was talking about ideation, we were talking about kind of research. You can use media monitoring to look at trends and opportunities. So really, really important. You can use a mixture of free tools and paid for. So Google is amazing because it offers like that news searching facility. So you can go to the news section when you're doing a Google search and find what people are talking about there. Google Alerts, we've got some examples of those in the next slide. Talkwalker also offers alerts, and you can get mention.com for a 14-day free trial. So you've probably all used Google Alerts before, but here's a couple of examples for two very different topics. But you can see how they can be really relevant, and they're free. And you can set these up to land your inbox like every day or weekly or monthly. I don't know if you want to do monthly, but you get a general idea. So you can tweak it and also filter your results if they're not quite relevant for you as well. There's quite a good filtering facility on there as well when the results come in. In terms of paid tools, we use Cision. But there's other ones that are on the market. So for example, you've got Brand Watch here and Meltwater as two ones that you could use. They all offer different things. They're all relevant in their own different ways. It depends what you're kind of looking for, but certainly worth kind of jumping into those links we've provided up here and having a little look around and speaking to the teams as well. They really know their stuff and do some kind of great walkthroughs of the platforms. So the last few slides we're going to be looking at is the kind of PR metrics that you're reporting on. So it's always worth setting up, when you're setting up your PR campaigns, and this is a kind of different tangent, but you will set up your objectives as to why you're doing PR from the outset. So you'll know what you're looking for in terms of your coverage. But in terms of what you can report on in terms of your PR metrics, the first one is around quantity and quality of coverage. So we can look at volumes. That's the total number of media mentions or pieces of coverage that have been achieved. Some of you might want to say, well, actually, I'm measuring success on the basis of the fact I'm getting X number of mentions of this story. And that's great, because if that's what your KPI is, that's fantastic. So, so it's very much dependent on what you set your KPI to be. Another type of metric would be reach. So what the estimated audience size is that's seeing your coverage. Again, that can be something that's really important to you. I would point out that some of the publications that we deal with for some of our clients actually have quite a small readership. So we might not necessarily recommend for the client to be so sort of hung up on readership, but we know if the coverage is achieved in that particular publication, it hits the exact it's a great target audience for them, and it's really, really relevant. So therefore, it's more about the domain rating of that publication. It's more about the mentions, the type of mentions, the quality of mentions within those publications. So it all depends on who the audience is and what the publications are and how relevant they are. Sentiment definitely needs to be a positive sentiment, and that will be tracked by your media monitoring service. And share of voice is when you're looking at what your competitors are doing compared to you. So when you're setting up your analysis, you would drop in your competitor names into that so you can compare yourself with them. So that's really important. Then looking at media coverage type and distribution. So the media outlets here, we classify our media into like gold, silver and bronze, or it could be tier 1, 2 and 3. So when I talk about those publications that might have a small readership but are relevant, that'd be like a gold tier publication, because it ticks the box for that particular client. So you have to determine that according to what your client's objectives are and what the story is. So you might tweak it a bit. For some of our clients, we have the sort of the bronze list as well, and we'll only target them at certain times. Otherwise, it's always a gold and silver list, for example. Geographic distribution. When I was talking to emailing Julie just a minute ago regarding her the story, if she achieved coverage in her Derby press, amazing. That's exactly where she wants to be geographically. It's not going to be probably a relevant national story, but locally, absolutely. But it depends what your story and what your news is. So obviously that's you have to think about that when you're pitching it out. What type of media is it? Print, online, broadcast, or on socials? And importantly as well, for us as a team, we look at domain authority or domain to just kind of make sure that you're targeting the kind of high ranking domain publications. And then we look also engagement metrics. So particularly on social, you'll get those. We're all familiar with likes, shares, comments, retweets, for example. So it's a question of like picking those up and actually sharing that with your client. What website traffic has been generated from your press release, so you can measure that through referrals, for example, through media coverage, and the level of interaction with your content on socials. In the fourth point is around influence and authority. So how much of your key message has been included? Has an influencer or third party mentioned it that's relevant to your business? Is it from a key opinion leader within the industry? And authority, so how many backlinks from authoritative news sites to your website are there, because that really enhances your brand presence and your sort of your SEO. And then we look at outcomes and conversions. So what are the metrics you're trying to achieve in terms of, is it lead gen, is it sales impact, is it brand awareness, perception? Set those up before you go and do your campaign, so then you can measure accordingly. So if you're looking for lead generation, that's something you want to have as your key objective when you first start. So therefore, you'll be looking at leads or inquiries generated as a direct result of that PR. If it's sales, it's what sales can be attributed directly to that PR campaign, Or it might be, in a traditional sense of PR, you're looking for brand awareness and perception. So it might be a change in that perception or brand awareness. It might be changing the sentiment from negative to positive, or neutral. You might want to get to neutral before you even get to positive, which would be a really good first step. And that could be measured through surveys or listening or your media monitoring, and also things like reviews as well and recommendations. That's a really great way of seeing what your perception is as a business. So that takes me to the last slide. So I don't know if Gurpreet's going to jump back on now, because that's the end of the presentation. So hopefully that's been helpful. We'll try and answer some of the questions. I don't know if you've been answering some of them, Ebony, when I was speaking just then.
There haven't been any more. I haven't. Okay. So there have been a couple that have been asked, though, that haven't been answered. So
good. Okay, great.
No, that was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. And congratulations to Julia. I saw that she was a part of the ceremony last week. So that was brilliant. We knew that she was going, so that was good stuff. Would you say that it's a good idea to shout about that? And
100%.
Yeah, but
yeah, of course.
The press release that was written and was Julia was allowed to share was great, but it wasn't relevant for her. But I gave a very, very quick example that to make it relevant for her local press, because if it's a resident of Derby, it's Derby's Julia has achieved this amazing award because of this, So they're thinking, great, a local resident has achieved something fantastic. But if she's grouped, it's all buried within in the information in that other press release. It doesn't really stand out.
Yeah, it doesn't.
So it's just about making it relevant.
Rebecca's asked a question. Could I write to a magazine such as Good Housekeeping or Woman and Home, offering them my products for free for an article? You might want to look at it more from like a product. They will potentially do like product placement stuff. So you might want to do it when they're setting up gift guides or that type of thing. So that they're not always going to be looking for product necessarily. So you want to hit them when it's going to be most relevant. I don't know what your products are, but yeah, if it's a gifting product for instance, then of course Christmas is a great time of year for that, because they are always going to be putting together gift guides and stuff.
But in July, not at Christmas. You need to be sending that information in June, July. I used to work at Waitrose, and we'd have big events in London in July. It's called Christmas in July. We'd basically take over a space, it might be a house or something, and make it Christmas. And that's when you're literally getting all your journalists in from all different walks of life, whether it be short leads or long leads, they'll be starting to write their Christmas stories. So think about the time of year and the lead times for those publications as well.
Good stuff. You're getting a lot of thank yous, and everyone's really enjoyed today. Got a question here. Do you take a materially different approach between a business which is providing a service versus selling products?
Well, it depends what the story is, I think, really.
It depends on the sector. I think from an ideation perspective, I would probably say not, because we're still trying to look for stories that are relevant, and we want to, and it still comes down to what's relevant to the industry, what's relevant to your business. Like those principles still stand firm, whether you're selling a service or selling a product. I think maybe the outcome of the story might be different. So for instance, you're not going to do product placement, and you're not going to get in gift guides if it's a service. Like if it's a service, you might be talking more about you might be doing more thought leadership stuff to kind of show how you are an authority on your topic, on your subject, and why people should come to you for that service. So I think that the actual the end story of what you put out there will be different, but the actual ideation process, if you agree, Amy, would be pretty similar, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I do agree. Yes, absolutely. I think you answered it perfectly, Ebony. Thank you.
And we sometimes pay for press releases. Can you explain? Now we're seeing this more and more as a trend, aren't we, Amy? From
don't talk to me about this.
Yeah, I was going to say, I know.
It's like my total bugbear. When I started off in PR, I worked for a very small agency, and